Breakfast was not yet over before the men came to put up the marquee. "Where do you want the marquee put, mother?" "My dear child, it's no use asking me. I'm determined to leave everything to you children this year. Forget I'm your mother. Treat me as an honored guest." But Meg could not possibly go and supervise the men. She had washed her hair before breakfast, and she sat drinking her coffee in a green turban. Jose, the butterfly, always came down in a silk petticoat and a jacket. "You'll have to go, Laura. You're the artistic one." Away Laura flew, still holding her piece of bread and butter. It's so delicious to have an excuse for eating out of doors, and besides, she loved having to arrange things. She always felt she could do it so much better than anybody else. 4 men in their shirt sleeves stood grouped together on the garden path. They carried staves covered with rolls of canvas, and they had big tool bags slung on their backs. They looked impressive. Laura wished now that she had not got the bread and butter, but there was nowhere to put it, and she couldn't possibly throw it away. She blushed and tried to look severe and even a little bit short-sighted as she came up to them. "Good morning," she said. "Oh, have you come? Is it about the marquee?" "That's right, miss," said the tallest of the men, a lanky, freckled fellow. And now she looked at the others. They were smiling too. "Cheer up, we won't bite," their smiles seemed to say. How very nice workmen were, and what a beautiful morning. She mustn't mention the morning. She must be businesslike. The marquee. "Well, what about the lily lawn?" And she pointed to the lily lawn with the hand that didn't hold the bread and butter. They turned, they stared in the direction. A little fat chap thrust out his underlip, and the tall fellow frowned. "I don't fancy it," said he. "Not conspicuous enough." "A corner of the tennis court?" she suggested. But the tall fellow interrupted. "Look here, miss, that's the place, against those trees over there. That'll do fine." Against the caracas. Then the caraca trees would be hidden, and they were so lovely, with their broad, gleaming leaves and their clusters of yellow fruit. Must they be hidden by a marquee? They must. Already the men had shouldered their staves and were making for the place. Why couldn't she have workmen for her friends rather than the silly boys she danced with and who came to Sunday night supper? She would get on much better with men like these, she thought. It's all the fault, she decided, of these absurd class distinctions. Well, for her part, she didn't feel them. Not a bit. Not an atom. And now there came the chock-chock of wooden hammers. Someone whistled, someone sang out, "Are you right there, matey, matey?" The friendliness of it, just to show the tall fellow how at home she felt, Laura took a big bite of her bread and butter. She felt just like a work girl. Away she skimmed, over the lawn, up the path, up the steps, across the veranda, and into the porch. In the hall, her father and Laurie were brushing their hats, ready to go to the office. The front door bell pealed, and there sounded the rustle of Sadie's print skirt on the stairs. Sadie was the housemaid. A man's voice murmured. Sadie answered, careless, "I'm sure I don't know. Wait, I'll ask Mrs. Sheridan." "What is it, Sadie?" Laura came into the hall. It's the florist, Miss Laura. It was, indeed. There, just inside the door, stood a wide, shallow tray full of pots of pink lilies. No other kind. Nothing but lilies. It's some mistake, Laura said faintly. Nobody ever ordered so many. Sadie, go and find Mother. But at that moment Mrs. Sheridan joined them. It's quite right, she said calmly. Yes, I ordered them. Aren't they lovely? She pressed Laura's arm. I was passing the shop yesterday and I saw them in the window, and I suddenly thought for once in my life I shall have enough lilies. The garden party will be a good excuse. But I thought you said you didn't mean to interfere, said Laura, after staring at the flowers for a while. But both Mrs. Sheridan and Sadie had gone. Laura went to see her sister Josie. Let's go into the garden out by the back way, suggested Laura to Josie. I want to see how the men are getting on with the marquee. They are such awfully nice men. But the back door was blocked by the cook, Sadie, and Godber's man. Godber's man had come to deliver cream puffs. Something had happened. Tuck, 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 clucked cook like an agitated hen. Sadie had her hand clapped to her cheek as though she had toothache. Only Godber's man seemed to be enjoying himself. It was his story. What's the matter? What's happened? There's been a horrible accident, said the cook. A man killed. A man killed? Where? How? When? But Godber's man wasn't going to have his story snatched from under his very nose. Know those little cottages just below here, miss? Know them? Of course she knew them. Well, there's a young chap living there, name of Scott, a carter. His horse shied at a traction engine, corner of Hockey Street, this morning, and he was thrown out on the back of his head. Killed. Dead? Laura stared at Godber's man. Laura caught hold of her sister's sleeve and dragged her through the kitchen to the other side of the door. There she paused and leaned against it. Josie, she said, horrified, however are we going to stop everything? Stop everything, Laura, cried Josie in astonishment. What do you mean? Stop the garden party, of course. Why did Josie pretend? But Josie was still more amazed. Stop the garden party? My dear Laura, don't be so stupid. But we can't possibly have a garden party with a man dead just outside the front gate. The little cottages were in a lane to themselves at the very bottom of a steep rise that led up to the house. They were little mean dwellings painted a chocolate brown. Washerwomen lived in the lane, and sweeps, and a cobbler, and a man whose house front was studded all over with minute bird cages. And just think of what the band would sound like to that poor Scott's kith and kin, said Laura. Oh, Laura, Josie began to be seriously annoyed. If you are going to stop a band playing every time someone has an accident, you will lead a very strenuous life. You won't bring a drunken workman back to life by being sentimental. Laura didn't know what else to say.